Welcome to Serious About Rugby League. On the agenda today, we're going to look at which current Super League players would make it in the NRL. Obviously, there's a lot of players that have gone out there and are smashing it, really. We look at Bateman, Sutton at Canberra. They've gone out there, done really well this year. So which current players who are excelling in Super League at the moment do you think, Jack, could go out there and really make an impact?
I think there's a few obvious ones. I think, well, if we look back over history of players who've gone out there, it's usually the forwards that do better. We've seen Gaz Ellis, you mentioned Bateman, Whitehead, Burgess brothers, Graham, etc. have all done better. All, forward players, and so I think if we look at that sort of trend, you've got to look at the likes of Alex Walmsley and Luke Thompson for me, the Saints pair. I think Thompson in particular, younger player, he's risen to prominence over the past few years and become, I think, Super League's best young forward. I think he's definitely up there. I think he's one player that could definitely mix it in the NRL. I think I saw this morning that Canterbury Bulldogs are weighing up a move for him. They've certainly got interest in him. So I wouldn't be surprised if they made a move. But Walmsley as well, I think, is another player that he's pushing what he's about 28 now, somewhere around that age, late 20s. But he's still mixing it, just as good as everyone in the Super League, and he's recently pushed into the England squad as well, and he's one of Super League's most devastating forwards. So those two for me, your first two names really up there. I think that'd go over there and do a job.
And what do you think, Joe?
Well, I mean, maybe a bit of bias here, but I'll go for Liam Watts, to be honest. I mean, I honestly think he's still, many people don't like him because of his previous behaviour, but he has got so much talent, I think. And arguably, he has carried Castlefort's pack for me this year, especially now since Senna Lefal got injured. What Watts brings to Castleford, is his ball handling, his strong running. Every week I look online, he makes over 130 metres minimum. That's his minimum carry, and he makes up to 50 tackles as well. That takes some doing every single week. And I think he's the reason why Castleford are up there. It's mainly him. Even when that was Hull FC's biggest ever mistake since they released Paul Cook controversially, letting him go, because they've not replaced him at all, and they've left a huge hole there. And just like before, Hull FC were up there with Paul Cook, and then they set him back for a few years, didn't they, when Cook left, and it's happening now again, I think, with Watts. Adding to Watts there, there's others. I maybe think Joe Greenwood. Speaking from a Hull's point of view, I actually wanted Hull to sign him last year, because they had trouble in the second row department. Greenwood brings a lot to Wigan as well. Not only is he strong going in, he's tough at defending as well. He causes teams trouble every week. So they're my main two, despite being different clubs. And one more, I'll go for Jake Connor as well.
No surprise there.
Well, let's face it, anyone would have him. Some supporters might disagree with that. But the fact is, for me, Connor, he would get into any Super League team, especially as a halfback. No wonder Leeds were adamant to get him for £500,000, but the fact is, his ball handling, his kicking game as well, and just his attitude, the way he winds teams up as well. That's arguably what helps England get a series win over New Zealand as well, so they're my top three. Different kinds of players, but still some I think that could excel.
Sorry, you said Joe Greenwood there, he's already been to the NRL.
Oh no, but the fact is, I think he could go back. similar to maybe even, possibly Joe Burgess as well, although it didn't work out for him at Sydney, but the fact is he's still got game time, and as Greenwood, I think he went a bit too soon. If he went back there now, because he's had more maturity with Wigan. Yeah. Because maybe he was a flash in the pan at St Helens. I say maybe, but the fact is, maybe he went a bit too soon. Now he's had time to mature. I reckon Greenwood could go back there and do a job.
Yeah.
Well, one worry I'd have with Connor, there's no doubt in the lad's skill. For me, he's probably the best certainly the best English back, if not the best English player that's not playing in the NRL at the minute. But my one worry with him will be his attitude. I think he's built up a bit of a reputation for, he said he's a bit of a wind-up merchant on the field and stuff, but I obviously don't know him personally, don't know what he's like off the field, but I think he strikes people as a bit of a cocky character. I think that could be one thing that really, that hinders him if he were to make the move over to the NRL. I was speaking to David Howes the other day, he was Gareth Ellis's agent when he went out there. He's Josh Hodgson's agent. And one thing that he said that players need to go over there with is the right attitude, and that's what separates those who make it and those who don't. You look at the likes of Sam Tompkins, Zach Hardacre, Greenwood, who we've mentioned. Players like that maybe haven't applied themselves as much as they should. They've gone over there thinking they've got this golden ticket to the NRL. It's going to make them a star, get them in the England squad, etc. whereas in reality they've got there and not realised how hard they have to work. And that's the difference where you've got the likes of Ellis, who was, you know, probably, other than maybe Adrian Morley, the first big player to go out there and make such a huge impact. You know, he had about, I think it was three years in a row where he was West Tigers Player of the Year. You know, players like him, players like Hodgson, Whitehead, Bateman, they've all gone over there and not taken it lightly and, you know, thrown themselves straight into it. And it's told. You know, I think often we'll find players that aren't maybe as high profile in Super League will do better. Mike Cooper's another example. He went over to St George, not, you know, he was a solid player for Warrington, but he was nowhere near their starting 13. Did superb there, and he's come back and he's one of, you know, again, one of Super League's best props. You know, which is why I think when I've noted a couple of names down that are perhaps outside bets. Joe Philbin from Warrington. I think he's a player that is, I think he's very underrated. He's a nuggety little prop that, you know, just does a job. I think he could suit the NRL well. Alex Mellor's another one from Huddersfield. He's a great line runner. I think this season he's probably one of the best line runners. You know, he knows how to hit a gap and come onto a ball so strong, and I think he's scored a fair few tries from that this year. So I think those two are definitely a couple of outside bets I'd throw in there, but I think it's definitely all about the attitude they go over with.
It seems as though, I mean, from the Super League, it's usually more forwards than backs that we're finding out as well, isn't it? And because, let's face it, I mean, it's more the forwards who are willing to put in the hard work as well. So, I mean, that's always been something. I mean, you look at the Burgess brothers as well, who still are successful, of course. So, I mean, I suppose as well, I mean, is it harder for a back to go over and do a job, would you say?
I think you've got to look at the physicality. I think the backs in the NRL, particularly in the outside backs, are a lot more physical. I remember when Hardacre went over, I always thought in Super League as a fullback, he was strong. He had, you know, great upper body strength when he take a kick and carry it back in. He would, you know, he wouldn't lose meters, he wouldn't lose yards, he wouldn't be pushed back. Whereas you look at him in the NRL, and I thought he looked so, you know, compared to the other players he was up against, looked so much more slender and so much weaker than them. And I think that really told. And I was really surprised when I watched him play and thought, oh, he's not actually as big as I thought he was. Which is why I think, you know, if we're going to talk about Super League backs, the likes of Jermaine McGillivray, I think could be a good candidate to, you know, nominate, maybe to do alright out there. Tom Johnson for me is the big one. I think he you know, he's still only early 20s and has plenty of years in him, obviously. So I think he's the bit. If we're going to look at outside backs, Johnson for me is the big one we look at that could make the impacts. I think he's physical. He's got a great mix of power and pace, and he's obviously a cracking finisher as well, which is three of the sort of main components they look at out there. But I think if Johnson went over there, had a good pre-season with the club, I think he could hit the ground running.
Well, I think even the players you mentioned there, the wingers out there, and I think the positions where England and Great Britain have perhaps struggled over the last decade is in the halves. There's obviously talk of George Williams joining obviously the English clan at Canberra. Do you think he would do well in the NRL?
I think he may struggle from time to time. I mean, that's no disrespect to him. I mean, I think he's got an outstanding sidestep, and even his kicking game has improved over the years. But the fact is, I mean, you do look at NRL opposition, Sydney and Melbourne. I mean, the fact is, they're so tight on defence. I mean, we saw the other day we went to Golden Point. I mean, it was very tricky. Even South Sydney recently, they've been tight on the defence too, and that's where Williams could maybe come unstuck against such a huge forward pack and the physicality. But I reckon he could do well from time to time, as I say. And what would be important there would be the familiar personnel around him with John Bateman. Because I mean, since Bateman departed Wigan, I think that's caused them to struggle a bit. So having guidance from the likes of Bateman, even Ryan Sutton as well, Elliot Whitehead, Josh Hodgson, I think that's where Williams, in a way, yes, he could thrive purely because of that. I mean, if you chucked him somewhere like West Tigers or somewhere like that, where it'd be all new to him, that's where, in that position, I think there he could struggle. Similar to even if you put Johnny Lomax there, who's outstanding for St Helens at the minute, but they'd have to be in a familiar surrounding. I mean, you've got to start somewhere, haven't you? But the Williams and them, they would struggle if you just chucked them anywhere, wouldn't they? I mean, in fairness.
I think it very much does depend on the club he goes to. I think with a position like, you know, standoff, it's so it tells how good a player is as to who he plays alongside. Like, I think if I'm honest, yes, if Williams went to Canberra, I think yes, he's got the familiarity of the likes of Bateman, Whitehead, etc. But I think he'd struggle in their halves. You know, likelihood is that if he went over there, he'd be partnering either Sam Williams or Aidan Caesar, and both are good players. But I don't think I think Williams in that environment would have to take over and be the leading halfback. I think he'd have a lot of expectation on his shoulders, and I don't think he'd live up to it. I think the similar story had happened with someone like Theo Fage, who has been garnering interest from Australia as well over the past few weeks after his start for St Helens. I think those two would perhaps struggle in that sort of environment where they have to lead a team around the field. I think they both do absolutely fine as like supporting halves if they went, I don't know, maybe somewhere like Parramatta where they were behind Mitch Moses, somewhere like that where they wouldn't have so much responsibility on their shoulders. I think they'd thrive really. I think another name we've got to mention is Jake Truman. Yeah. He's another one I think is obviously a massive future. I think he'll be in the England squad in the next 3 years. So, a time frame like that. But I think he's one who, maybe not now, maybe a few years down the line, once he's matured a bit more, I think he's probably our best bet in terms of halves to go over there and make the biggest impact as a half. But I think, English halves always struggle over there. So, any player, any halfback that goes over, it's a massive gamble. But I think those three are definitely the top candidates as it stands.
Yep, interesting. Well, I've got a big list in front of me. I'm going to go through them all, but I think you've nearly mentioned everyone on it. So I'm pretty sure you guys will have your opinions. Who do you think of the current Super League crop could make it in the NRL? Let us know in the comments.
Watch every game of the NRL, plus the grand final and State of Origin, from anywhere outside Australia, New Zealand or the Pacific Islands. Go to watchnrl.com and take the footy with you.